and welcome to Garden Style. So I'm back. I've been on vacation for about a week and a half and I'm finally back, ready to go into episode 2 to cover perennials for the sun. So the perennials that I have chosen today, some are very common. You've probably heard of them before, but I find them to be amazing in the garden, especially in a really hot, sunny garden. All the plants I'm going to talk about today are drought tolerant. So let's get started. The very first one I want to talk about is Echinacea, or coneflowers. Now, these have come a long way, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. You can find all kinds of colors in these now. The most popular being the pink or the Magnus version of coneflowers. But now they come in like a single petal like this, or you can also get them where they have like a pom-pom on the top like this one. And two beautiful colors that you see right there. But you can also get them in yellows and whites, shades of purples and pinks. And I find these to be extremely drought tolerant once they are established. And they just get bushier and bushier with time. Now, Echinacea, or coneflowers, have been around for so long, I think because they are so drought tolerant and very hardy in most areas. I'm looking up the zone here for this particular variety. I'm always sure to just double check them to make sure. But this guy is hardy down to zone 4, which is fabulous. And if you live in a zone any colder than that or in zone 4, I do recommend that you mulch them during the fall. So it protects them even further from any kind of winter damage that you may incur if your winters get really cold. Here, our biggest concern here in the Northwest is moisture. So they definitely need really good drainage, a nice rocky, kind of gravelly type soil with just minimal amount of compost is all they need to really get established and get going. They're very similar to lavenders in that respect. In fact, all of these are. Most of your sun-loving perennials like this who can take the heat, 100-degree heat, and they barely flinch as long as you're keeping them watered. Usually require really good drainage at the same time. So Echinacea coneflower I find to be excellent in a sunny garden. So look them up. They are definitely available in your garden centers as we speak. And I've had a lot of people ask, can I still plant perennials during the month of July? Absolutely you can. It's a perfect time to be planting them. The biggest ticket is just to keep them well watered, especially in very hot heat. I tell folks plant most of your perennials in the evening when it's a little cooler. They can go overnight during the cooler temps, and just keep an eye on them as you would anything, even if you're planting in the early spring. But you can most definitely plant perennials in July and August for that matter. A lot of your garden centers will have your sun-loving perennials available depending on the season of bloom. So these actually start blooming in about early to midsummer, and the coneflowers will keep on blooming all the way up until the first frost. Just keep them dead-headed. As long as you keep the flowers trimmed off, they'll just keep sending up more. So Echinacea was my first one. And then a second one I wanted to introduce you to. Really cute. This is called Gaura, and this particular variety is called Swirling Butterflies, which I thought was a really neat name. But these add a really nice texture and softness to the perennial garden, and they're kind of a pink-white. They're actually kind of a deeper pink bud that comes out, and then as they start to bloom, they're kind of a real light pink and then gradually fade to white. So Gaura is amazing. Let's see here. I'm going to look up the zone for you. Yeah, and these are good down to zone 5 or minus 20 degrees. They can take full sun to part shade, so they're not real fussy if they're not getting, exactly 6 hours of sunlight every day. Extremely drought tolerant and very long blooming. I've already planted a few of these in the garden, but getting ready to plant some more as I'm trying to create a drift. And being I'm limited on time, sometimes for planting, I'll get a few in and then I'll go back and I'll plant a few more. And as you know, garden is always an evolving thing anyway. But another fabulous perennial, and they of course combine well with just about anybody. They have great companions. Let's see, did they give me a list here of companion plants? No, because they can pretty much go with anybody. And these are also deer resistant. The deer don't like to eat either one of these, either the Echinacea or the Gauras. So if you have an issue with deer, this is a really good plant to go with. as they have a tendency to just keep on walking rather than stopping and trying to take chunks out of your plants. And of course the bees love them as well. They love both. And a little thing I forgot to mention about echinacea or coneflowers is with these guys, I don't cut them back in the fall. When they're all done with their bloom thing, I actually like to leave the seed heads on the plant. And that usually happens around the end of September, beginning of October. I'll just let the plants naturally die back. And by keeping those cone heads, you know, they're producing seeds at that point, the birds absolutely love them. So I like to just leave them in the garden. Not only does it add winter interest, but it helps to feed the wildlife as well. So just wanted to throw that in there with echinacea. Then another fabulous plant, which sometimes you see these growing on the side of the freeway. This is the wild version. And this is called Russian sage. And of course it's in the sage family, so that in and of itself tells you that it's basically an herb. But this of course is used for its decorative elements. And I absolutely love this stuff. You can get these where they get 4 to 5 feet tall, or you can get a dwarf version, and that's what this guy is. He will get up to maybe 3 feet high. So he's great for the middle part of the garden. If you have taller plants that are sitting in the front. And this is also very hardy. This is down to zone 5 or minus 20 degrees. But this particular variety, which they call just a dwarf Russian sage or little spire, the botanical name is Perovskia. Extremely hardy plant, and when your lavenders are starting to die off, some of your more purpley type plants, these guys start to take over and just keep going until the very first frost. And right now you can see it's just now starting to send up its spikes, and then the blue flowers start to open. And if you plant these in a drift, you'll just see like this beautiful misty blue that starts to appear in the garden. And during hot temperatures, that's kind of nice to see. You can easily combine them with other plants like the echinacea, and I just love oranges and purples together anyway. But they kind of have a softer look to the garden, or add a softness to the garden, and a cool kind of effect. So in the hot summer, when you're in the 90s, it's kind of nice to see a nice cool purple or cool blues out in the garden, as well as white. It just helps to give it a kind of a cooling effect or a cool look to your garden, and helps calm down some of the warmer, hotter colors that can be in the garden, like your oranges, your reds, your yellows. Mixing in purples and blues is fabulous for just cooling off the garden, so to speak, as to how it looks. So Russian sage, another fabulous hardy perennial for full sun and extremely drought tolerant. I have Russian sage I've completely forgotten about in the garden. I don't water it, and it doesn't seem to care. It just keeps going. In fact, it likes it that way. It doesn't like having too much water on it. Okay, so there's 2 or 3 sun-loving perennials for you. As you go towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you a tour of my own garden and show you all the fabulous blooms that are going on at this time of the year. This is actually about the peak time for my particular garden. It's more of a June, July garden. It calms down a little bit in August, and then we'll pick right back up again as we get into fall, as I'm trying more and more to plant more fall type colors to help extend the season for the garden. So I hope you enjoy this little tour that's coming up. I hope you all are having a fabulous summer. I feel much better after getting a little rest and being able to take some time off. But now I'm ready to get back to it. You wouldn't think there would be a whole lot to do in July, but I find for me, I'm still filling holes with perennials, and of course there's always weeds. That seems like a never-ending project for all of us. And we've been pretty lucky here in the Northwest. We've actually had some pretty cool weather up until this coming week. I see we're starting to creep back into the 80s, but we've actually had some cool rainy weather over the last couple of weeks. My lawn has loved it, and I've loved it, as you're more encouraged to get out in the garden and get things done. But now I can see it's starting to warm up here for us, and we'll start seeing 80s and 90s as we get further into July and August. So let the watering commence. And whatever you do, give all your plants one last feeding. If you start getting into July and August, you want to back off the fertilizing a little bit, as most of them are just trying to survive on a daily basis, except for things like your hanging baskets, potted plants. It's always a good idea to be feeding those at least once a week and keep those blooms coming for as long as you can. I back off completely when it comes to fertilizing my lawn and other things during July and August. It's just hot enough to where most of the time you're watering or just weeding, just maintaining the garden basically during July and August, and get more of a chance to just kick back and actually enjoy it rather than working forever in it. Okay, I'll quit blabbing here, and hope you enjoy this tour of what I have accomplished so far this year. And send me some pics. I would love to see what you guys are doing out there. And of course, in my next video, I'm going to leave that as a surprise as to what I'll be covering next. Meanwhile, glad to be back, and hope you all are having a fabulous summer so far. Meanwhile, enjoy the tour, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now. Okay, well, I'll start here, which is what was pictured right behind me during the video. But this is phlox, and this is actually a coral color that I have installed here in the garden, as well as some volunteer Johnny Jump-Ups sitting there. And you'll see I've got some bricks lined up right here. I am getting ready to install those as a new edge here in the garden. So they're not installed yet, but you can see where I had trim in here, just so we knew the difference between the bark and the gravel. But that's what I'm working on over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And that's usually what I get to during the summertime. I'm going to be edging this whole area in here. Is hardscaping. Starting to finally get to that point. When you have a brand new garden, you're just mostly worried about getting plants in. But right now, I'm finally at a point where we can start adding finishing touches. And I just went with bricks along here. They're very cheap and inexpensive. And just something to delineate the lines and keep the gravel from going in the grass, as well as in my beds. And over here, you'll see I have candy tuft, which is blooming. And this is a different variety than some of the white candy tuft. I talked about these earlier in an earlier video. This is called pink ice. And I know they look white, but they're a very light pink. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. The super light pink there in the blooms. And they actually bloom after the original candy tuft or white candy tufts bloom. So that's one of the reasons I put them in here. Just because they bloom later. They combine really well with roses. You can see here, got the double knockout rose blooming its heart out. And then you'll see here in the background, hydrangeas. I love this time of the year when they start blooming. And this is a white one, a mophead hydrangea that's just getting started. And as I send you down the garden here, the other ones have buds on them way at the end down there, but aren't quite in full bloom yet. But you can see my hostas are blooming like crazy, as well as the astilbe there in the background. Japanese maple is literally getting engulfed with hosta. But this is actually my shade garden. I really should be showing you my sun garden. And we'll just flip over to the other side and get into that. Alright, so as I take you along on a little garden tour here, keep in mind this garden is very young. It's maybe 3 years old. I took over the house and the yard hadn't been worked on for about 8 years. So there was a lot of trees getting cut down, clearing, and replanting. But I'll show you what I've done so far. As you can see, the veggie beds are here, and they're probably going to move back once we get a new fence put in. But this is the herb garden that you see here with some planters. And I think you guys saw me planting these earlier in the year. I thought I'd give you a close-up. Isn't that a gorgeous plant? That's a senecio, the succulent, and it's got the wallflowers growing in behind them, but he's gotten huge. And I need to water these containers maybe every other day. They do like it on the dry side, but they have turned out to be outstanding. You can see the other one way in the back there. Just ignore that ugly veggie bed to the right. There are no veggie beds this year, but yeah. And we've got golden oregano, and of course there's some lavender, rosemary, some thyme, white sage there, sacred sage, that's used for smudge sticks. So I'm doing an experiment there, see if I can make some this year. Right behind that is a gorgeous barberry. That's rose glow. All its new growth coming out kind of a pink. And then there's a sidewalk here, which you can see is lined with catmint. And the catmint is due for a trim, needless to say. And I've continued planting through here. So these plants are a little bit younger, but more lavender. It is very hot and extremely dry back here. Now here's a beauty for you. This is Pentsimon. Hummingbirds absolutely adore it, and it does great in dry, hot conditions. More wallflowers. Butterfly weed. And this tall stuff in the back here is actually goldenrod. And I'm hoping you can see it for the glare, but it's got a lot of buds on it. And that is drop dead gorgeous in the fall. Turns gold. And here you can see, hopefully, nice big swath of lavender in full on bloom. Bees just are partying on it. They love it so much. Dun, 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 dun. So now we've got the lavender blooming. And tucked down inside there you're going to see the Nautia blooming. These are all plants I've covered in past videos if you want to know more information. And behind here is actually a fuchsia pink phlox. You'll find I'm a phlox lover. The first one I showed you actually only gets maybe 24 inches high, where these get about 3-4 feet high by the end of the summer. And down in front we have Shasta daisies, and this is the frilly version right here. And I've been wanting to add more red and yellow, so we've got gaillardias, which are new in the front, and more Shastas here. And I love these because they come out yellow. They're kind of a pale yellow and then gradually fade to a white. And you can see that the other ones are like white, and then we can just kind of have a yellow, and then eventually these will be white as well. So in love with Shastas. And then off in the background I have some very tall perennials which bloom a little later, bee balm as well as goldenrod, and those will start to show their thing by my next video. But here we go, peak season is just getting started. So I'm a purple lover, and these are Fricardi asters, Fricartii, if I can pronounce that right, along with some Anfocard geraniums, kind of just crawling in between them there. There is nothing formal about my gardens. They are very kind of wild. More of a cottage garden. And I've got Coreopsis just getting started. You can kind of see where they're starting to open. Of course, with daylilies in the back. And then I'm going to cruise you down here. These are Johnson's blue geraniums, which just never quit, but are getting ready to be trimmed. And check that out. Isn't that gorgeous? Daylilies. It is the season. Reds, lemon yellows, beautiful orange and yellow. And look at that. Burgundy. And I've got hot lip salvia that I just installed this year, sitting in front, along with the scabiosa flowers there. So very new. All of this is really new. Just still filling holes. Just endless. Absolutely endless. Jack Frost Renera there, because this is a more shadier area. So you're starting to see hostas appear. And here I've got the lilies, more calla lilies. And I've planted some more, so I want them to thicken up and start to take over back here. But as I pan across, this whole garden in here is new. I got it planted partially last year, and still filling in holes for the shady side. And now that I kind of have the foundational type plants in, by next spring I'm going to be planting in some more shade perennials for color, so I can have some more color during the summertime. But I love the leaf textures in here, and this is by far one of my favorite plants. Right there. This is the Jack Frost. Early spring bloomer for those guys. Okay, moving on. So if you guys have never planted creeping thyme before, I highly recommend that you do it. I only planted 6 plants in here 2 or 3 years ago, and it has all grown in here. I've had a lot of you asking me what this is when I have pictures of it. And there's a golden sedum in the background there, Angelina sedum. and leftover tree stumps. So I have a tendency to utilize them, and I just put a pot on top. This happens to be my man pot. It has lavender. I poke some petunias in there with flax in the top. And a gorgeous weeping birch just behind there, which offers lots of shade during the summer. And if I swing you over to the side of the house here, you'll see a line along the wall. This last winter I used to have a carport there, and it collapsed during the snowstorm. So goody goody, you guys get to see another project in action as I install yet another fence with a big arbor. And you'll see what I do with this narrow pathway next spring, as it's all going to get landscaped. And I'll show you some primo plants to put into narrow spaces that can take full-on sun, because this faces due west. But lots of my own personal projects you guys get to follow along with me for. But back to the time. I have a big mound that sits here in the middle, and it's in the heat all day. So I needed something that can take hot, dry conditions. So I put in thyme, Angelina sedum, and there's this beautiful kind of blue-green sedum that you see there. These all started from just one plant, and they have spread immensely. And we're still filling in a few holes. If I take you around this mound, you can see the thyme here hasn't started to bloom yet because it gets a little more shade. But I am hoping it will just keep going and fill in this backside where I have Bergenia, or pig squeak as they call it, another native fern in the corner there, and a beautiful Korean lilac who's a rebloomer. He's not blooming now, he just got done doing his stuff. I gotta give him a little trim actually. He's looking kind of shaggy. But he'll bloom again in August, and I'll have some more blooms that I can bring inside. But yeah, gotta love creeping thyme, and as you can see, it's creeping out into the gravel here. I have a gravel driveway. And some old rocks and things were still sitting here when I moved in, so I just utilized them and built a bed around it. You didn't even know it was here at one point. But creeping thyme, and this particular variety is called pink chintz. And right behind it is a spirea. All can take hot, dry conditions really well. Okay. So I was given a piece of driftwood from a friend of mine. It literally came right off the beach. And another friend of mine gave me an old fishing pole that they found. And I think that's a buoy that's sitting there. So I just kind of grouped them together. I wasn't quite sure what to do with them. But all of this is in the shade where I've got hostas, of course, and hellebores. And lots of native ferns taking over here with a viburnum in the back. Still piecing together. This is all in the front yard, and I got this really cool tree that's got a really neat curve to it, as you can see. This thing is at least 40 feet tall. So I'm constantly fighting dry shade. And these little guys that you see growing underneath are actually native here. These are actually like a little native dogwood ground cover, and they get the cutest little pink blooms on them in the early spring. And I just let them do their thing. Why not? And I put in a pathway which goes down the hill here to the front yard. And you guys probably saw a video a while back where I had no grass here at all. It's actually filled in pretty good. I still got some rough spots here and there I gotta still reseed, but yeah, it's green now, and boy, it's definitely a lawn. I have to mow it constantly. But up here in the front, I have another grove of trees before you see the road there. I kind of live on a corner lot here. And down here, we have hypericums, which are blooming. And these came with the property. Somebody planted them here, and what an awesome ground cover for a dry, shady area. But yeah, check out the blooms here. Hypericum, or St. John's wort. And yes, this is the medicinal St. John's wort. And I literally had to weed block it in so it wouldn't take over the lawn. You can see, you know, how far it is from the lawn, not too far. But I had to weed block it in so it would behave itself. But man, it is perfect underneath these trees. And I never have to deal with it. I give it a little water now and then, get sprinkled when I sprinkle the lawn, and that's about it. And some weigelas here. These are reblooming weigelas. Just ignore the fact that you see a few weeds. I think that's a constant in everybody's garden. This will give you an idea for the red blooms that come up on these weigelas. And these are a reblooming variety as well. So when these get done, they'll bloom again. And the cool part is the deer don't seem to bother them. I've not had them try to eat them. I do have a deer problem here. So I'm always coming up with plants that are deer resistant. And I say resistant because I don't think there's any such thing as a deer-proof plant. They're hungry enough, they'll eat anything. And another new specimen that just went in. I just happen to have a power box that sits right on the corner of my property here. So I'm hoping this guy gets big and strong and I won't have to look at it anymore. But beautiful blue spruce. It's like a dwarf variety. I can get him in there. Yeah. And look at this. I just now noticed this. Look at the pine cones. Check it out. So he's happy. Alright, you guys, so not a lot of blooms to show you at the moment, but lots of foliage and texture, as June's kind of quiet after the big rampage in May. And by the time we get to the end of July, I'll have lots more to show you. But for now, that's kind of the end of my little tour. Here's my kitty. This is Chloe. She's very good. She's been catching lots of moles out here. You see what they've been doing to my yard? Look at that. Now I've got to reseed. But she's already caught 3 of them. Good kitty. Any of you who have a really good cure for getting rid of moles, by all means, let me know. I've been trying several different things to no avail, but I think I might have my answer right here. Alright, you guys. Hope you're having a fabulous summer. I wish all of you a happy summer solstice. And we'll talk soon. Bye for now.